All right, let's dive into a puzzle that's been bugging philosophers for centuries. But here's the twist. The answer might actually be sitting right in front of us, in the very technology we use every day. We're talking about that deep, mysterious connection between your mind and your body. And we're going to see how an idea from way back in the 17th century, when you look at it through a modern lens, might just be the key that unlocks the whole thing.
Okay, let's start with something you do all the time. Think about it, right now. You decide you want to pick up your phone or take a sip of coffee. That's just a thought, right? An idea in your head. And then, boom, your physical hand actually moves and does it. But how? I mean, really, how does a non-physical thing like a thought make a physical thing like your arm move? This isn't a trick question. It's one of the biggest mysteries in the history of philosophy.
So, to really get why the solution is so cool, we have to understand the problem first. And our story really kicks off with the guy who put this mystery on the map, the French philosopher René Descartes.
So, Descartes had this big idea called substance dualism. Sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. He basically said reality is split into two completely different categories of stuff. You've got the mind, that's the thinking, feeling, private you. It's not made of anything physical. Then you've got the body, that's the physical machine, the collection of atoms that takes up space. Think of it like a ghost in a machine. Two totally separate things, two different worlds.
And right there, you hit the massive, glaring problem with this whole theory. People called it the interaction problem. If your mind is a ghost and your body is a machine, how does the ghost drive the machine, right? How does something with no physical properties, no weight, no energy, how does it make your very physical arm move? It's like, where's the control panel? Descartes, well, he never really had a good answer for that one.
Okay, so not everybody was buying this ghost in the machine idea. Enter our next thinker, a guy named Baruch Spinoza. He looked at the exact same problem and came up with a totally different and honestly a much more elegant answer. Spinoza was what we call a monist, and it's the total opposite of Descartes' dualism. If dual means two, mono, from the Greek, means one, single. Spinoza's big idea was that when you get right down to it, everything in the universe, everything, is made of just one fundamental substance, not two.
And this is where Spinoza gets really clever. He said, look, the mind, or thought, as he called it, and the body, extension, they aren't two separate things. They're just two different ways of looking at the same one thing. The best way to think about it is like a coin. You can look at heads or you can look at tails, but it's still just one coin. For Spinoza, the mind and body are the two sides of that single coin. And the coin itself, well, that's everything. That's reality. He called it God or nature.
Now remember, Spinoza was writing this stuff back in the 1600s. What's so amazing, and what we're going to get into now, is how we can take his idea and give it a 21st century upgrade, translating it into the language of science.
So you can kind of see the progression here, right? You start with Descartes, who splits reality in two. Then Spinoza comes along and says, nope, it's one thing, just with two different faces. And that brings us to today, where we can finally put a name to that one thing. We can think of it as a single informational process.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. That one substance Spinoza was talking about, today we have a word for it, information. And I don't just mean that as a metaphor. When you start thinking of reality as information, you suddenly have a language that can describe both your inner, subjective world of thoughts and feelings and the outer, objective world of atoms and neurons. It's the missing link, the bridge between a centuries-old idea and what we're learning today in fields like neuroscience.
Okay, so what does this all mean for our original puzzle? How does thinking of things this way, what you could call information monism, actually solve the problem of how a thought moves your hand?
Well, the advantages are pretty huge. First off, that whole interaction problem from Descartes, gone. It just disappears. You don't need a bridge between mind and body if they're just two sides of the same coin. It's also just simpler, way more elegant. One reality is a lot easier to deal with than two separate ones. And maybe the most important part? It fits perfectly with what modern neuroscience is telling us, that every single thought you have, every feeling, corresponds to a physical pattern of information firing in your brain.
So what it boils down to is this. Your mind and your body aren't two different things in a tug of war. They're one system, a single unified process. The subjective feeling of, I am deciding to move my hand, and the objective physical event of, neurons are firing in my brain, aren't cause and effect. They are the same event, just described in two different languages, the language of mind and the language of matter.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little abstract, right?
It's easy to say everything is information, but what does that actually mean? Is it just a buzzword? And that's the big question, isn't it? Information sounds, well, kind of weightless. How can information, this abstract concept, actually do anything in the real world? How can it have the power to move a muscle or create the rich, subjective experience of seeing the color red? That's a fair question.
The answer starts with a really important point. Information is never just floating around in the ether. It always has to exist in a physical system. It needs a physical medium to live on. You know, it's like software and hardware. You can't have one without the other.
Think about it. In your brain, information is literally the electrical and chemical signals zipping between your neurons. In a computer, it's the physical state of transistors being on or off. The information isn't some separate thing added to the system. The information is the specific, meaningful pattern of the physical system.
Exactly. So information isn't some spooky second ingredient. It's the recipe. It's the blueprint. It's the structure and organization that makes matter what it is. It's what makes a pile of carbon atoms into a diamond, and it's what makes a burst of neural activity into your favorite memory.
And by looking at it this way, we avoid falling back into a new trap, a kind of dualism between stuff and data. No, it's all one thing. It's a true monism. Reality is just one single informational process that has two sides, the physical aspect you can measure and the mental aspect that you experience. So there you have it. By taking this brilliant idea from Spinoza and updating it for the 21st century, we get a really compelling solution to the mind-body problem. And it leaves us with a pretty mind-bending question to chew on, right? If the very fabric of reality, from you and me all the way out to the farthest galaxies, is fundamentally informational, what does that really mean for our universe and for us?